Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. It is Friday. We're going to check out some brand new music. This one I found from Napalm Records. Came out just 22 hours ago. Death Dealer Union is the band. I've never heard of them. The track we're going to be listening to is called the Integument. Let's dive into this and see what Death Dealer Union is bringing to the table today. Very heavy metal. Really interesting putting the belt over those layered poppier vocals. This is kind of bonkers, but it works so well. Trying to figure out if that's a second guitar line or if that's a keyboard, a synth of some sort. Oh, there's two guitarists there. Not what I would expect from a pretty traditional heavy metal sound so far. Beautiful. Ooh, deciding to end on that tension. Not a bad decision given we're going to jump back into this higher intensity. Yeah, I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. You know, when the track started out and it was very standard heavy metal, I was like, yeah, I don't have anything against heavy metal. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, listened to a lot when I was a kid. But not really something I go actively seeking, but they made a lot of really interesting decisions with this foundation that I think sort of elevates it a bit. I mean, first of all, the vocals. There's so much about the vocals that are not traditional. There's certainly plenty of lines that have that more aggressive grit to them, occasionally getting a nice belt out when going for a higher range section. These are more in line with what I would expect from the music, or what I would expect in the vocals given the music, but it's not the only form that the vocals take. We also have a bit of a harsh in there. I primarily heard it at the end of our third verse, I think it was, but it did appear every once in a while on certain syllables throughout the verses. I don't think we heard it during the chorus, though. But I am wondering if there are songs where they more heavily feature the harsh, and it's such an interesting sound. I don't know. For some reason, I just don't associate. I think it's because it's a modern harsh, right? When I think of heavy metal and as it got heavier um, over time, I think more of the growl, the lower harsh, rather than this higher fry that we have here. It's anachronistic. I think that's what it is. The vocals feel modern and the music feels classic or timeless, however you want to look at that. But that's not the only modern way that the vocals are presented either. There is a huge poppiness that we hear both in the verse, well, the verse, the chorus, and the bridge, primarily due to the way it's produced. I don't think there's much going on in the projection, the delivery of the vocals that are poppy. We do get a little bit of that airiness, which is popular today in the bridge. Kind of going for that low effort, quieter, airier kind of voice in the bridge, but in the verse and chorus, it just kind of feel like clean vocals to me. I wouldn't say that they really gravitate towards any specific genre that utilizes cleans, but the production on them is certainly pop with the way that they're layered and the fact that I'd almost wager the harmonization layers are all digital. There's something about the harmonies that feels just a hair bit too perfect, and a little bit of a roboticness to them. Um, that feel like she sang one track and then they put a choir or chorus effect on it. Um, but I don't think it's distracting. A lot of pop music does this, and maybe I'm just used to it. Maybe people who don't listen to a lot of pop hear this and are like, oh no, these vocals are disgusting. I don't want to hear anything like it. They're obviously, digitized and whatever. And yeah, I can't disagree. It's an acquired taste. It takes time to get into metal. It takes time to get into pop, right? This is a topic for another day, but just because a lot of people like pop doesn't mean it's easy to get into. It has hurdles, depending on where you're coming from, just like any genre does. But yeah, the vocals are just very modern pop, produced primarily, like I said. And I think that's a really interesting angle to go. Again, because of the anachronism, because of how the vocals feel against the music temporally. They feel like they come from two different eras of music. And I think that's very cool. The fact that we mix all of this together, the heavy metal belts, the modern day harshes, and the modern day pop production, interwoven keeps the vocals themselves very contrasty and interesting. If you don't like what's happening, just give it a moment, something new is going to come along. But it also feels fresh against what the music is doing. And I like what the music is doing as well. The verse and the chorus it's heavy metal. We got some pretty iterative riffs coming in the verse. They keep the energy driving. I think there's a pedal tone that exists to create driving energy so that they can keep this consistent eighth note idea going up. If you ignore it, you just get this really nice riff on top of it. It's not syncopated, it is staccato, which is short, sharper notes, very high energy riff style of writing. The drums are metronomic, just sitting in the background and keeping that energy and direction and time moving forward. The chorus, we flip over and we move to chords on our guitars. There is one melody line coming from one of the guitars, and the timbre is interesting because I confused it with a keyboard for a little bit. But that's just another way that I think they're allowing pop music to influence this. It doesn't sound like a heavy metal guitar tone. It certainly doesn't feel influenced by any lead guitar tones from heavy metal. It feels like a lead guitar tone influenced by modern day synth music, electronica music. And once again, I think that's very cool to be bleeding these sides of music all together. There's pop, there's heavy metal, there's, I'd even say, a rock element, maybe a hard rock element in the chorus that does remind me of bands like Hailstorm. Then pop and electronica. It's a bridging of a lot of stuff, and I think it's very cool to see all this coming together. All of this takes us to the bridge, which I think is an interesting section in that it's a deviation. When I think of heavy metal bridges, I think of guitar solos. I think of ramped up intensity. I think of more drive. And they switched it up and went to a power ballad, which, I mean, a lot of heavy metal bands tended to have. No, did they? I think I'm getting that mixed up with hair metal bands always had a power ballad on their album. Regardless, metal ballads aren't completely unusual, but they're always, at least in my experience, segregated from the core sounds. And I think it's really cool to interweave that into the track, and actually had a nice transition moving into it. The transition out of it was a little harsher, but it was fine. But I like to transition into it. Nice smooth way to fade into this new idea. A beautiful guitar solo on top of it. Very tasteful, really taking their time in a way that feels melodic overall. And I do think that this is a type of melodic heavy metal, which I think is awesome. It's not a genre that I think I've heard a lot of. There are certainly guitarists who take a more melodic approach to their soloing over heavy metal music, but melody in heavy metal, you find melody in the aggressive riffage, which usually means there's compromises made. I really like this melodic driven section here. The drums back off a little bit, still sticking to pure metronome style. The guitars kind of back down. They get out of the way for the lead guitar to solo. The bass provides direction and foundation. The other guitar gives us a little bit of chords. I was paying a lot of attention to the solo guitar there, so I don't remember what the second guitar was doing. And we got a little bit of vocals there at the end to bring us. Oh no, we didn't, because the guitarist went into that very tense note. And then there's a bit of rising energy, and then just out of nowhere, we're back into our third verse. But it was just a really nice switch up, I thought. And I quite enjoyed the little change of pace there. And like I said, I like metal ballads, and I like that they snuck one in here rather than just putting one on the album divorced from everything else. And that's not to say that there isn't a pure ballad on the album somewhere, but I really like the way that they cross genres and sounds in here. Um, aside from that, though, I don't think that there's anything interesting going on here technically. It's a very iterative sound as far as each individual idea. The pop vocals are iterative. The melodic guitar was iterative. The riff that the guitar was playing was iterative. What it is the band does everything that they do exceptionally well, building off the backs of their influences, and they innovate by combining their influences into one sound, which I think comes out rather well. I didn't think that I was going to be pulling this band off to the side for me to check out later after the first verse and the intro, but it really surprised me by the end of this. And it's just it's comfortably new, and I dig that. I think I'm just in a really good era though for music because it feels like the game right now. If you want to look at music creation as a game of trying to get in front of people's eyes rather than just making what you want. So I guess in the popular sphere of music, the game right now is genre bending. Everybody's doing it. Look at some of the most reacted to music out there, and you'll find genre bending music. In fact, uh, one of the biggest reaction songs for a while was that new track from Falling in Reverse that had trap and hip hop and rock, hard rock, metal, screaming. He did everything in it. Um, that's what people like to see. That's what's interesting right now, and I feel like a lot of bands are doing it, and I'm here for it, honestly. Not just because I'm a reactor, but although that is a weird coincidence there. But I just really love when genres get smashed together. I'm not a big fan of setting up boundaries. Um, and there's a lot of bands doing that right now. So it's a good time, at least for me, to be alive while this type of music's being created. I'm going to take a second to look at the lyrics and then we're going to wrap this one up. These are phenomenal. Um, I say this with love. These lyrics are delightfully campy in the best way that I associate with heavy metal lyrics generally. The song overall is about deciding to be happy. It's not something that you it's not something that falls into your lap. You don't wait for it. You just decide today, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to make life work. And you make mistakes, you learn from them, you come out the other side a better person rather than beating yourself up for making another mistake. That's the whole song. We have lyrics like clear your mind from all the noise, being happy and free is a choice. It's okay to make mistakes. Learning from it is what it takes. Um, Our verse says, burn the grief and throw away the ashes. The bliss tastes like gasoline. Sober up and grab the matches. You've spent enough time in quarantine. It certainly gets the point across. There is imagery of fire in a lot of these. We have the idea of being strong from nature, which we see in our first verse. From the cold storm and cold nights, hear the roaring thunder sounds, learn from them and become strong. Invite them to come along. You know, saying, you're going to have rainy days. Get better from it. Make it a part of who you are rather than, well, make it a positive part of who you are rather than staying in these rainy times. It's all very, very heavy metal. And it's a bit campy, I think, but it works so well. There's something innately campy about heavy metal. Maybe it's because I'm a bit divorced from it. It came out before my time and was kind of getting a little I don't know if I could say getting traction, but it was becoming more popular as I was growing up. Um, so it wasn't like I was a teenager when it came out, or I was an adult when I was like a kid. I don't really have much of a connection to it other than that's what my dad listened to, kind of thing. So maybe it's just because I view it from a younger perspective, have a little bit more distance to the genre, I think is what I'm getting at. But it's such a campy genre between the riffage and the imagery of the bands and the general sound, how it's kind of missing that darkness that metal eventually went into. It's heavy metal still has a brightness to its overall harmonic landscape, and the lyrics want to be aggressive without really crossing that border. And maybe a lot of this is just in comparison to modern metal too, which I have more. I'm closer to it. I have more experience with. Um, But yeah, it's just so delightfully campy, and I think these lyrics do a fantastic job of capturing that while still, bordering that line of is this cool or is this kind of cringy, and finding the middle point there that I think just works really well for heavy metal as a whole. So, like I said, it kind of sounds like when I say it that way, towing the line between cringe and camp, that I'm dismissing it or bad mouthing it, but honestly, it comes from a place of love. I love heavy metal lyrics like this. There's something very honest about it that I think speaks to me for whatever reason. Um, and like I said, it matches my idea of I don't know if there's necessarily a through point where I'd say that themes of these lyrics are met in the music, but it fits the sound of the music. I have these two levels of camp sort of intertwined in my mind. Anyways, let's wrap this up. Those are my thoughts on Death Dealer Union's The Integument, which I had to go look up because I'd never heard that word before, and it actually means a cover or enclosure, but specifically in the case of organisms, some sort of enveloping layer, such as skin, membranes, or cuticles. I'm really trying to figure out what that has to do with this, other than the idea of maybe it's not even a song about like growing thicker skin. I don't know. I don't I don't know. It just feels like a random title for it. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I don't know. As usual, let me know y'all's thoughts, opinions, perspectives. If you have any insight into this title, put it all down there in the comments section. Above the comments section in the description box is a link for a link tree. Takes you to this menu here. You can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. We have one more new song today, which I think is going to be pretty cool. It's described as proggy post-rock slash maybe math rock. I don't know. I like post-hardcore. I like proggy music. I think that's going to be a good mix for me. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to check out a whole album. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.